All right, excellent. That worked too. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for logging in on fairly short notice, and we're going to cover a few things this morning, but basically we are here to talk about the 2024-2025 program year in CSD Cares and how we are going to start the year. And I'm throughout the whole process, I'm trying not to use the word rollover because, as I'll explain in a minute, that sets up some expectations based on the way that we used to do the new year in COPA, which is not the
Hello,
same
can you hear me?
year. So I have a couple housekeeping elements before we get
Hi,
started. The
Maria,
first
can you hear
is
me?
please mute yourself. I can hear you, but I
You
don't
can
want
hear
to.
me,
So
Sarah?
please mute yourself. And if you have questions, put the questions in the chat. I'll be saving it. I'll try to get to some during the presentation, but if not, we will get back to you later with the answers to those issues. Okay. So just a second and we'll get started. So CSD Cares, I am assuming that you know how to get in. For the record, myself and the data team that I manage are not responsible for login access to CSD Cares. That's through the IT department. There is a form if you need newer updated access to the system. The link is right here. I will be making this presentation available to
Oh, I need to get
everybody
my
later this week. But again, that's how you would access a new user. We also have a new ticket system, but again, I'm not able to put you in CSD Cares, so please don't send me an email asking you to. Okay. So I should have updated this date, but all children are going to be enrolled in CSD Cares this year. New children need to be added to the School Mint system. It is not okay to use some other system for enrolling them and then telling us that they're enrolled. And this is not me telling you this. Most of our funding at this point comes from the Early Childhood Block Grant, which is funded through Chicago Public Schools. And so in order to actually be enrolled, children need to be in the CPS system, and the way you get in there will be through the School Mint application. But more on that in a minute. But we need everyone to be alert, review materials, attend the ongoing trainings, and so on to keep up to speed, because this is our new system of record, and it's going to be our only system of record. People are still using COPA for some purposes, but that is going away in a couple months here. And so we will need to do everything in CARES. So about that, we have a new product. We have ServiceNow, which is the new all overall point for help. So we're replacing a number of things with ServiceNow. There's a new ticket system there and also knowledge base. So the digital hub where we had training materials, as well as forums and so on. The CSD support email system, the old Caspio-based ticket system have all been replaced now with ServiceNow. So when you're in your CSD dashboard, you will see one of the tiles there is this thing that says now. I just took a picture of it here. So that's how to access multiple useful things. So the knowledge base is in there. which again replaces the digital hub. And also there's a link that says Get Help. And this where you would access the ticket system, where you would start a ticket if you're having access issues, you're not seeing the right pages, you need to add new staff, having difficulty enrolling a child. All of those things will go through ServiceNow. Okay, so here's now what we're going to do today. I'm trying not to say rollover not to confuse you, because rollover is something that happened where we got to the end of the program year in COPA, and those of you who are around to remember record keeping in COPA will remember this. We got to the end of the program year and then kicked everyone out of their classes and rooms and archived the children who had aged out of the program, and then asked everyone starting the first day of class to re-enroll everyone within a few weeks. So that's why I'm not calling it rollover, because we haven't ended the program year yet. We are still going to be in the 2023 to 2024 program year straight through August, but we don't have to wait that long to set up the new year. So we don't have to end this year first. CSD Cares allows us to operate 2 program years at once, which we're doing now. So the steps that we're going to go through over the next few weeks are to set up groups and classrooms for the new year, identify which children are returning who are enrolled now, accept new children through the school mint system, then apply funding for next year to children, and then place next year's children in those groups and classrooms. And I'll come back to this. So I'm actually going to start, and I'm going to start here because I did a webinar in October, and many of the people in home visiting programs turned it off and said that you're going through a bunch of things that don't apply to us. Well, first of all, they do. If you're not using School Mint to enroll, you need to do that now, because we're not going to be accepting children any other way. But in order to kind of facilitate that participation, I'm going to start with the caseloads for home visiting kids, and then I'm going to hit the classes for center-based kids next. So the big piece that you need to have in place to set up a caseload is you need to have the home visitor in the system. So to do that, you'll have to go through look at the HR adding staff section, which again is now available through that ServiceNow knowledge base. So the first thing you need to do is that the home visitor exists as a contact and is associated with the site. So on the site page in CSD Cares, you'll see a box that says related contacts, and it should have all of the staff that are associated with that site listed. So again, this is where to look under human resources management if they're not there. They are there. They need a caseload every program year. And this is what I want to stress now, because we didn't say this last year and we ran into a lot of issues. For next year, you are not going to update the dates on your existing caseloads and classes to the next year dates. They need a new class for next year and a new group for next year. And the reason for that is we're starting them now when the old one still exists. You can still go in and work with this year's class, but you can also put next year's children in it. So a new caseload needs to be added every year. So to do that within the contact, I'm telling you how to do it through related contact, but you can, as you've probably noticed at the top of your page in CSD Cares, there's a search bar. If you just type in the person's name, you'll get to their file. And that's really how you'll use CSD Cares once you get into it. So, but on the contact file, scroll down to find the caseloads box and just hit new. There's a form to fill out. You got to give it a name. It's not going to listen to you, but you did give it a name anyway. If you're going through the contact, the caseworker is already there. You select the correct funding program version, which is either PI home-based or early Head Start home-based or early Head Start childcare partnership home-based. And then a time period. So again, you'll have to choose between 23 and 24 and 24 and 25. So you're going to pick next year. This is probably, there should already be one for this year. Okay, when you save that, the new caseload will be renamed. So whatever name you put in where you ask for a name, it'll give them the same name, which is the teacher's name, the funding program, and the year. So this makes it easy to find them. And so that will be the caseload into which all of that caseworker's kids will be assigned. We're setting up a class. I was going to say it's a little bit more complicated, but it's really not. The only tricky part is you need to know the program option for the new year. So you have to create a new class. Again, you cannot update the start and end date or the program year for an existing class. So you can name it the same name. You can hit new on this little screenshot. I've told you how to go to the list of classes and hit new. But if you look at an existing class, there is also a clone option, which will make a copy of it. You just need to remember to change the program option. So it has to be associated with the program option and time period for next year, which is 24, 25. We open those already. When the Schoolman application for the 24-25 year went online, which was back in April, we had to set up the program options for next year at that time because they're linked one-to-one. So every option that is in CSD Cares has a mirrored program in Schoolman. That's how you can apply and have the kids come over. So we created them already. They do exist. And if you look in the system, you should be able to find them. Yes, what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is if you look at the site profile, so you've got the ABC Daycare site in CSD Cares. There's a box when you scroll down that says program options. And right now it's going to list them all. We're working with the developers to get the old ones out, but it should have this being the third year, it should have 22, 23 options, 23, 24 options, 24, 25 options. There may be too many at this point to fit on the site, to fit on the screen, so you'll have to click view all. So you'll have multiple options. You need to pick the one that is the right age group and year. And this will have its own ID. It's some PO for program options, so it's PO dash and a 5-digit number. Just write that down so you can then, when creating a class, add the program option to the class. Okay, so then when you add a new class, again, you'll put that program option, you'll search for that program option here, it'll come up. If you've just looked at it, by the way, it'll be the top option because the way Salesforce worked, when it gives you a list of things, the one you looked at most recently is on top. And you give it a new name. I would put the year in parentheses as part of the name, because if you already have a Bumblebee's 23-24 room, you won't want to get them confused. So now you need one that's called 24-25, just so you don't try to put kids in the wrong class. Because in site, the room does not need to be changed. Your rooms are already in the system. So when you're creating a new class, just pick the one that you picked last year. And then schedule, it's the same. You can use the same schedule you did last year. You don't need to create a new one. You can actually use the same schedule for every class at a site. I would recommend that you make a new one for each, not necessarily a new one, but you have a different schedule for each class, because the schedule is what you use to close a class so that no one is present or absent. I mean, it's convenient if the only time you're closed is holidays to have the same schedule for every class, and then you only have to do it once. The problem is we're still in a period when from time to time, one classroom is closed because somebody has COVID. And in order to close that class without closing the rest of the school, you do need to have its own schedule because you create a schedule exception just for the time that that class is closed. You can still take attendance in the other classes. If we get out of this period and we don't see that happening anymore, then it doesn't matter. It'll be easy enough just to close the whole site if necessary. Okay, so that was the setup part. The next piece is the new piece, and hopefully that's what we're all here for. So we need to be able to identify our returning children, and we need to do that quickly so we can enroll them in the next program year. So this is where, I hope this works. It should be fine. I'm going to not just tell you about, but show you the new ServiceNow system, because we did get step-by-step instructions for navigating this process from the vendors, and there is a self-paced training that is already live in that knowledge base, and I'm going to show you how that works. Just a second. Not that one. Where is my dashboard? Here we go. So as I said, everything on the ServiceNow system can be accessed through this little link that says now. So I'm going to show you that. So here's the ServiceNow system. This, by the way, that says get help, this is where you would access the new ticket system. But I'm going to look at the link that says knowledge. So here again, if you're logged in through the single sign-on, you should already be here. And this is confusing. The first time I logged into this, I couldn't find anything because these tiles look useful. They're not useful. Forget about them. You scroll down. Okay, now we've got knowledge bases plural. So I'm going to pick CSD cares for delegate agencies. And now there's a grid of categories. You can see we've got CCAP enrollment, we've got staff class management, case management, human resources, all this stuff. Okay, so there is what we're talking about today, re-enrollment. The re-enrollment section has how-to documents that you can download. It has videos walking through the process. And it's got this that's called the self-paced course. So I'm going to look at this. And here to launch. That's fun. Okay, so this is how all of the self-paced courses are going to look. We've got the menu on the side, and it says, got an overview of what it looks like. The CSD cares will give you the ability to complete the following functionality. Users to indicate the students who are not returning. That's an odd way to put it, but we're going to do both. So, and then they've broken it down by user role. These are all the same, but administrative managers can indicate whether a student will be returning or not, ensuring they will not be re-enrolled, and indicate if it's okay, right? Or SIA managers, it's the same case manager. Now that I'm looking at this, that's an odd way to put it. Yes, we will indicate which ones are not returning because we're also going to indicate the ones that are returning and the other ones are the other ones. So when you get in and look at the current status of all the children, they will be already identified as either eligible for rollover, aging up, or aging out. So eligible for rollover means the student is in the age range of the program option, program type, and thus can be re-enrolled. So what that means is if they're in a birth to 3 program, they have not turned 3 yet, they can return to the same program that they're in. Or if they're in a 3 to 5 program, they will not be old enough to move on to kindergarten. That's what that means. Aging up means the student's age range is when the age range of the next program option. So this is really for 3-year-olds. So children that turned 3 during the previous program year. So during the 23 to 24 year cannot return to a birth to 3 program because they're too old. Aging up status means they can be enrolled in a 3 to 5-year-old program if you have one. So if your agencies that have both age groups, you can age up the children who are returning and give them a spot in next year's program. And then the children who are aging out, this means 3-year-olds for sites that don't have a 3 to 5-year-old program or 5-year-olds for preschool age programs. So they will not be returning because they're too old. Okay. So you can see what kind of status they have by looking at their existing program enrollments. So each program enrollment indicates the status. It'll be on the far right. We're looking for information about which children are eligible. Refer to the active program enrollments list. What does that mean? Okay. So they would select program enrollments from the more dropdown. So if you are looking in CSD cares, you've got these familiar menu at the top, and then under more, you can pick program enrollments. Probably other options for you as well, depending on your access. So, and then like everything, and this is the single most confusing thing about Salesforce, when you go to a list, it's going to default to recently viewed. So it's going to show you only the children that you've looked at over the last, I don't know what time period, but few weeks, last few times you've logged in, something like that. So you're going to go to the little upside down triangle here and pick active program enrollments. So that will only pick the kids who have not dropped, basically. Okay. And then once you get the list of active program enrollments, you'll see that this column has been, a couple columns have been added, but there is a rollover eligibility status pretty far over to the right here. And it's got those 3 statuses that we talked about. It says eligible for rollover, aging up, or aging out. It's also got this rollover student column here, which is going to be checked once you finish this process. So that's how to find them. What happened here? That's not what I meant to do. Okay. So here, continue. So again, for all of these, I don't know if I need to go through this right now, but when you go through this yourself, there will be a video. This one isn't very long, but I don't know if it's going to catch the sound in Zoom or not. But you can watch a video here that will just have someone logging in, calling up the list of active program enrollments and locating the status. So they tell it to you this way. They'll show you the video, and then here you can download a PDF of the instructions. So for each stuff, they're breaking it down like that. And there will be instructions for all different parts of CSD cares that look a lot like this in the knowledge base. Okay. So the second part is how to mark the enrollments for rollover students. So what you're going to do is review their active program and decide if that child is returning next year or not. And if you don't know, you should mark them as returning, because we can invalidate their enrollment later. But if you miss this step now, we'll have to go in and hunt for them one by one. So this is how you mark their status. You're going to select program enrollments, again, from the More dropdown. We've just gone through this, actually. Find the active program enrollments to get back to this list that we we're talking about. So once here, for children who are, so for the children whose status is eligible for rollover, on the right-hand side, you're just going to click the box. It's kind of visible, but it's right next to their number in order here. You click the box. Like so for all of them. So you can do this all at once. Just click the every child who's going to be coming back in the fall. Okay, once you've done that, where are we? Over to the right, next to where it says rollover student, just for one of the kids, click the little pencil that will appear. That'll give you a box that looks like this. And you will, right now there's only one, but you may have multiple boxes here. You'll just check everything. Let me see if I can make the video work. So here you'd say update the 3 selected items, apply. And now everyone that you've selected previously will have a box here that says rollover student. And for now, I think that's pretty good. Okay. So once they've been checked, they have been identified as needing to enroll. And since I'm not sure that's completely clear, let me see. Let me see. You can hear this.
In this video, we're going to show you how to mark program enrollments for rollover students. To begin, we start at the CSD Cares homepage.
Okay, somebody tell me in comments whether you can hear that or not.
We can hear it.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Awesome.
We can hear it.
I made it work the first try, so here we go.
Yes, we can hear.
We will select More and then select Program Enrollments. From the List View dropdown, we will select Active Program Enrollments. Now that we see our list of active program enrollments, we can mark the students who are eligible for rollover. So we can mark Alvin, we can mark Annabella, we can go ahead and mark Arnold, we can go ahead and mark Baldwin and Bernie. So by marking them, we're clicking the checkbox next to the program enrollment for that child that's enrolled. And we're looking at that they are eligible for enrollment. Now, in this case, we've selected 5 individuals. We'll stop here for demonstration purposes, and then we'll go over to the rollover student column, and we will select the edit pencil icon next to one of the children that we've marked, that the checkbox is marked. And we'll go ahead and click on that edit pencil icon. We will select the first checkbox, which is the rollover checkbox. This is the training environment, so the text is not displaying, but there should be text here that says rollover. We are going to update the 5 selected items. So the 5 children that we selected, we are going to apply that and click apply. And what we're doing is we're marking them for rollover. So once we go ahead and click the save button, They will now in the system be marked as a rollover student. As you can see, the checkbox here is now selected. That concludes this how-to video.
Okay, and again, there will also be written instructions in PDF that you can download and use. They'll follow the same step-by-step process here. Okay, the last piece is reports. There are 3 different reports that are available. This will just help you see which kids need to be set up, and after you've done it, which kids have already been set up, and who is re-enrolled for next period. So the aging out report just will give you a list of students who are too old to come back. The returning students report will give you a list of students who are eligible for re-enrollment. And those are the only ones you could really look at right now, because the third one will give you a list of children who have been re-enrolled for the next period, which right now is nobody. So the reports on your dashboard, when you first go into reporting and analytics, there is a tile marked reporting and analytics, which you can check. I'm not sure everyone knows that that's where the reports are. There are reports. You would click on reports once you get to that point. And then all folders will be a screen that looks like this. And you will scroll down. There's a category that says re-enrollment reports. And here are the 3 reports that they're talking about. You can run each of them. So that's how that works. Again, there's going to be a video here, but I watched the video and they do not cover what's in them. I'm not sure they were ready yet when they filmed it, so that will be boring at this point, but be aware that it's there. And again, there will be a paper form if you're more comfortable with that, that you can access to also look at the process. Okay, we do not need this, so F11. So you can, again, re-access any of these materials through the, I'm trying to say digital hub, but through the knowledge base. However, if any of you, for some reason, cannot access the knowledge base right now, I'm going to send this whole presentation out in the next CSD update. I put a direct link here, so you will be able to copy that into a browser, and it will take you to the re-enrollment process training without having to go through the digital hub, or the ServiceNow knowledge base. But I wanted to show it to you this way because I want you to know where that is and get everyone using ServiceNow. Going to make all of our lives a bit easier. I think it's much better organized than the digital hub was, so you'll be better able to find the things that you're looking for. Okay. I'm pausing right now because I can see someone taking a picture of the screen. There we go. Okay, so once that process is done, then what? So after that point, as I said, if you look at that report right now, even after you do that, no one will have been re-enrolled yet. So we're going to do that from our end all at the same time. So take everyone for whom the rollover box is checked and create a new program enrollment for them for 24-25. That will also cause there to be applications for any applicable funding programs that you have. So for example, if your site has both Preschool for All and Head Start, and this child is a returning 4-year-old, once they are re-enrolled, it will automatically generate a new application for the current year for both of those programs. So any program that you're funded for, you should automatically get an application once they're re-enrolled. If that does not happen, and there have been cases where it did not happen earlier this year. So if it does not happen, please let us know by starting a ticket in, again, ServiceNow right away, and we'll forward that to developers and make them fix it. So the plan is to take that step on August 15th. So 2 weeks and change before school starts. We want to take everyone who's been identified as returning and create new program enrollments for them at that point. If you haven't updated their status by that point, it's about 3 weeks from now, then they won't be included in the thing that I'm trying not to call rollover, and you will have to go through one by one and create a new program enrollment for them. So this will be much easier because you only have to log in once, check all of their names, and give them the status, and they'll all be enrolled at the same time. Otherwise, it'll have to be done one by one. So we're hoping that most kids will be caught in this process, and we'll be able to move on with the new year with a couple of weeks extra time. Okay, so those are the first 2 steps. And in many ways, that's the easy part. So beyond the enrollment of returning kids, we obviously are going to want to enroll new children as well. So as I said, that process must be through Schoolment, and there is not going to be another way to enroll children. Okay, so Schoolment, what is it? Schoolment is the company that operates the Go CPS online application for CPS programming. So starting with the fall 2022 online universal application, we moved away from the COPA-based application that we used in previous years, and it's been replaced by the CPS system. CPS wanted this change because Schoolment is actually the same company that they use for Go CPS, which is how you would apply to magnet schools, selective enrollment, high schools, and elementary schools, and so on. So they have one application system for birth to high school. And they do this because that system is linked with their Aspen data system, which is what gives everybody their CPS ID. So it's not my fault. I didn't want to use Schoolment, but we're using Schoolment for now. And there's no other way to do it because otherwise, if children don't come through that system, they don't count as enrolled in a CPS funded program like the Prevention Initiative or Preschool for All. So they, in order to be counted as enrolled in those programs, you need to have a CPS ID and be in their system. So they don't like it either, for the record. They've already done a request for proposals. They've already picked a new system. And so for the 25 to 26 program year, it will not be Schoolment, it will be something else. I don't know what it is, but I hope I'll find out very soon. Okay, so the next thing about this, and the big complaint that I hear is our kids are in Schoolment and they're stuck on the waiting list. So I'm just talk about that just for a minute. They want to know why the kids are there. How can they get these waiting listed kids into CSD cares? So the short version, there's several little answers, but the big answer is just that there is not a slot that they are eligible for open in the system. So there's a couple subcategories of that. The big one is that the site is full. So on the universal application, you have a certain number of seats available for each age group that you offer. So you may have a certain number of birth to 3 seats and a certain number of 3 to 5 seats, a certain number of home visiting seats, perhaps. And when they're full, the system will not offer anyone a new seat. Everyone will be waitlisted. So if that's the case, you need to go into Schoolmint, go to the Applications tab, and you'll hit the button that says View Results and Options. If you can't see it, again, they did a weird thing where they try to simplify the screen. So go to there's a little search bar that says Apply Saved View. You just pick the standard view and you hit that, and then you'll have the button. So the View Results and Options page will show you which children have offers in Schoolmint. And if they're no longer attending, you can decline their offer, which will free up spots for your children on the waiting list. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because we've done this before, but I will send these out to everyone. If the child isn't appearing in the offers section, you can look down under all applicants. That might mean they've been enrolled for a while. So there you can click on the detailed in notes, which will be next to their name. And it will bring you to the box that talks about what documents have been viewed. If it's checked, uncheck it. If it's unchecked, check it. Either way, when you refresh the screen, it'll bring to the top and you can decline the offer. All right, the second reason that someone might be waiting listed is that there are vacancies, but the applicants don't qualify for them. So you have seats that are at different levels of eligibility. The most restrictive one is like homeless and public assistance, and it goes all the way up to unrestricted seats, which are just first come, first serve. So when you go again to that View Results and Options page, you select capacity, and this will show you how many seats you have at each level. So if that's not right, all you need to do to change it is click on the little pencil and fix it. Okay, so this is what they mean. As I said, level 1, you're basically homeless or foster kids. Level 2, income at less than 100%, which is roughly Head Start income eligibility. Level 3 at 200%. That's around like new children for CCAP eligibility. Level 4 is 400%, which is what we're able to offer kids for PFA and PI right now. And then, as I said, unrestricted means anybody can take the spot. So kids have multiple funding sources often, so you want to look at those to make sure you set them at a level where they're eligible for all the funding sources you want them. But you can change them. So if we didn't give you enough slots, we gave you too many slots, we put the slots at the wrong funding level. We were just guessing when we set up the application based on last year's funding stream and last year's enrollment. So if anything has changed and you look at that and you say that's not true anymore, you can go ahead and hit the edit pencil and fix this. It'll take overnight because I do have to approve them. So when I get in the morning, I open up the page and I see if there is any requests, and then I click OK, and then they take effect. Okay. So again, when you click on the edit pencil, you get a screen that looks like this. You can just toggle up and down. You don't want to have too many seats because we do not want a situation where children are given an offer and then they come to your door and are told that it's full. It's much better to put them on a waiting list and then contact them and bring them in later. So if you're adding new capacity on one line, you might want to go in and take capacity away from the other line so that the total is correct. So if you have a total of 40 seats, you want to make sure that they add up to 40. Okay. A less common reason is there's something wrong with the application. Typically that is that they didn't put income information in. For whatever reason, you can submit an application without completing the income form, but then it won't go through and you won't get an offer. So even families with no income who are applying, they need to pick an income type that is no income and save it. So they do have an income record. It just says $0. Okay. So CPS, when they set this system up, assume that the parents were all going to apply online. If they don't, and they just walk in instead, then you need to apply on their behalf. There's not any other way to get them in. There's not any other way to get it CPS ID. So if the parent doesn't have an account, that's the best case situation. You can create one for them and then just complete the application. If they do have one, you need to find their username and password to do that. This is what that looks like. If they don't have one, you can put in an email for them, parent's phone number. Then it should be parents' information, not yours. Another problem that ended up happening with children not coming over from Schoolment into Salesforce is that when people applied on their own account as agency staff, they had some of them 50 children. This was confusing to the system and it stopped sending the kids over. So you create a new guardian account with the parent's name, not yours. And then put them in. Now, if they do have a CPS ID, if they've been in the program before, but they're not in there, or they were on your spreadsheet last year that was submitted to us. If you put that ID in here, it will recognize the student and fill out some of their information for you. Okay. So once they've been added, you can file this screen and add applications for next year. So if the child is already in the system because they applied somewhere else or they applied last year, you don't actually need to recreate the child's information. If you have the login, you can just log into the Schoolment as the parent and then click the button that says add applications and put a new year one in using the same account and the same everything. And they'll know their ID and so on. Okay. Once they're in the system, they'll be given an offer. Just unfortunately, it's not instant, it's overnight. So if they're eligible for a slot when you put them in, the next morning they'll have an offer and you can click the button that says accept. And this will cause the information to come from Schoolment over to Salesforce, again, with a few hours delay. So really what happens is you go into the system, create an application, then overnight they'll get an offer, you'll accept it. Then overnight they're sent over to the system. So this is 48 hours from filling out the application to being able to complete the enrollment process, which is why we're asking you to do this now. You do not have to wait until September to accept the kids and then wait for them to come over. You can bring them over for new kids, for returning kids. We're going to try to do this on the 15th. For new kids, you can go ahead and accept them here. Your returning kids should already have offers in Schoolment. You should see them on the list now. Most of them will be there anyways. So for new children who will be coming, you can accept them now. This will give you time so you can, again, put them in the class and so on before the beginning of the year. So once it's been accepted, it should be passed over again to CSD Cares. And just like with the returning kids, this should create a program enrollment automatically. And then it should create applications to each of the funding sources that they're eligible for. So again, the program options are by site and by year, and they're visible on the site page in CSD Cares, but you need to scroll down. So you'll have a list that looks like this. Within the program option, you want to look at this. If you just look at the site for program enrollments, at this point, you may see children there 3 or 4 times based on how many years they've been in the program. So within the new program option, you will see the list of enrollments, you see who's missing and who's already has a seat from this list. Okay. So if that didn't happen, particularly for a returning child at the program enrollment, either you didn't get them marked in time or something went wrong, But if you've had them before, you should be able to create a new program enrollment for them. Again, within the program option, you would go up to the top of the screen, click on new program enrollment, and just search for the child's name. Once they come up, you can put their new start date in, and just save it, and they should now have an enrollment. For the records, the start dates this year, I believe that September 1st is a Sunday and September 2nd is Labor Day, which is a Monday. So September 3rd is going to be the start date for that program year. Last year it was September 5th. I realize this is after the CPS start date, but we need everyone to use that. People who used an earlier start date and somehow made it work last year ended up causing problems because you can't then drop them or do other things with them due to the start date error. Okay. So the next thing, and again, you will be able to do this before September. So once the children have a program enrollment, either because they were identified as returning or accepted as new children, you can apply funding to them. So you can put them in Preschool for All, Early Head Start, Child Care Partnership, whatever it is that you're funded for, you can add that again before September 1st. Once they have a program enrollment for the new year, you will see the option to do that. Okay, and this is the most important part of the enrollment process. So if you put them in the class but didn't give them a funding program, they're not going to come up on any of our reports. So we won't see them as enrolled even if they're in the class because they don't have funding. So that is key. Okay. I've got a few questions here. Yes, the start date is September 3rd for the new program year because we're going to be closed on the 2nd. Is the procedure the same for over income enrollment? Yes. We are getting rid of the old Caspio ticket system that we used to use to request over income. Instead, we're going to use, again, that ServiceNow link. So if you try to apply funding and you can't because the child is over income, start a ticket, give me their information, and we will work on approving those. Okay. Going back here. For kids that are in schoolment and have a CPS ID that are aging out, do we need to drop them? We don't. You need to drop children from schoolment during the program year if you need to replace them. So if you have new children coming in order to create a seat for them, you need to drop the old one. But we already have two lists. We have the 23-24 year is still active in schoolment. We have the 24-25 year. So if anyone was enrolled last year but not enrolled during the current year, you shouldn't have to drop them. They're just not included in the new year. However, I would look in schoolment at the new year and see who we've already given a seat to, because back in May, what we did was took all the kids who were not old enough to age out and marked them as returning in schoolment. So for those kids who didn't age out but have left, you will need to drop them from next year. Okay. Not much I could do about the volume, unfortunately. Let me see. Maybe I can. Okay, so there are some limitations to the system that you do need to be aware about. I know people have asked if you can have more than one program option in a class. You can't, because so much of what we're doing at this point is funded through CPS. They do not want rising 3-year-olds in their preschool classrooms. Those children are still eligible for the prevention initiative, but not for preschool for all. So you're not able to put a birth to 3 child in a 3 to 5-year-old classroom right now. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so here's the big one. We have children receiving offers for which we have no openings based on our internal wait list. How do we make adjustments? So the adjustment you need to make is if you don't have seats, but children are being given offers, that means you do have seats in school mint. So we need to take them away. So when I showed you before, if children were stuck on the waiting list, you can increase the number of seats to allow more children to enroll. If you're full, but school mint doesn't say you're full, for the moment, you need to reduce the number of seats so that no offers will be given. There's also a box next to the numbers of seats available that is called stop mode. And so you click stop mode and nobody will be able to apply, or everyone who applies will be waitlisted until that's released. So the other reason the system might not think you're full when you're full is that you have children who are in the class, but they're not in school mint. So if that's the case, the first step you do is put the site in stop mode so that no more offers are made. And the second step is take all the kids who are not in school mint and put them in, because we can only accept kids through school mint. Once they're in there, then you can take off stop mode, and we can give offers to those kids who are already there. But you should not have an internal list that doesn't agree with school mint. So if you do, you have children on a paper list that are not in school mint, they need to go in today. Okay. Another one, can we start declining seats? Yes, you can. Go ahead, and anyone, like I said, a lot of seats have been given out to prospective returning kids. If they're not returning, you already know they're not returning, yes, you can go ahead and decline them right now. So the other piece to be aware of, I guess I didn't point out, but I should, we are still running last year's application in school mint at the same time. So we did not end the old one to start the new one. So when you are logging into school mint to look for offers, to look at applications, to do declines, make sure you're in the right year. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen, it's either going to say 23, 24, 24, 25. And you can toggle that in school mint. But once you get to the screen where you can accept or decline, you actually can't. That's not really school mint. That is Banyan, which is another company that does the placement for us. So make sure you're going into the right year, because they're both active right now. We will be turning off the current year application in a few weeks, but right now it's still open because we do have children who are starting now. And in order to start now, you need to go in through the current year application. Okay. Can I repeat the end date? Now, I'll just be completely honest with you. I have no idea what the end date for the 24-25 year will be. I am assuming that it will be August 31st, 2025, which will be a Sunday. But I'm not 100% sure. And I don't think we've made that decision. We have set that up as the end date during this, as we set up next year, because we need an end date. I think that will be correct. I think as much as possible, we will always want to be starting on the first or the first school day of September, because we are trying to put CCAP and childcare billing into the system, and it is much, much easier to have August in one program year and September in a different program year than it is to have the year switch in the middle of the billing cycle. But I don't know if that's always going to be possible. That is the goal, though. It makes things much, much simpler. But for this year, again, I guess the year formally starts September 2nd, but that is a holiday. So there will be no school on September 2nd, and most programs will also be closed. So we'll be looking for enrollment dates of September 3rd. Okay, so to be clear, I tried to cover this, but here we go. So the question is, if we don't have any seats for next year based on our returning students aging up, or internal waiting lists, but new parents are receiving offers, what do we do? You need to put the site you need to put all of the levels for the site into stop mode for the upcoming program year, until all of the children who are returning will have offers in SchoolMint. So let me see, enrollments here. So you see this screen, now this is the accepted screen. Can we have? Okay, so this is the screen. If you go through SchoolMint and then go into view results and options, and pick the capacity matrix, you will see a grid that looks like this. So this shows how many seats you have available at each level. And there's a box between the level name and the points that's labeled stop mode. If you click the box for stop mode, it'll put a check mark in there, and that means that no one will receive an additional offer. And that will persist until you take them out of stop mode. So if you are full, but not in SchoolMint, you need to turn the application off here, and then put the rest of the children in SchoolMint, at which point you can turn it back on. Or just start a ticket and tell us which kids aren't there, and I'll turn it back on and force offers for the children who are coming. So how did I get to this screen? Is there an earlier one? Yes. So on the list of applications in SchoolMint, there's a little box that says view results and options. You click on that and it will give you a choice depending on your access, whether just to view early learning results or see the capacity request. So click on the capacity requests, again, making sure it's the right year. And that's how you get here. So you can set up your seats. That's the same question here. What if the seats don't match your slots or don't match what's available? Click on the pencil here. and you'll come to a screen like this. You can change the capacity. So if there's too many or too few slots, you just add or remove seats and then until you're happy with the number. And I'll have to approve that in the morning, but typically that's done by 10. I didn't do that this morning because I'm here doing this webinar, but I'll be doing that immediately when I get off. Also, what is the 45th day? We started on September 1st. The 45th day would be October 15th. There being 30 days in September. So that'll be October 17th if we start on the 3rd. So please be aware. I know I said this at the meetings, the EDP meeting the other day and other places, but just be aware that we're talking about calendar days with the 45-day requirements, 60-day requirements, what have you, so that you don't get weekends off. So the 45th day is literally, if we start September 3rd, it's October 17th. And for any child who enrolls later, their 45th day is 45 days after the enrollment date. So a child who enrolls on November 1st, December 15th is their 45th day, and so on. So just try to keep on top of that as kids enroll during the year. Okay. Did this. Okay, so funding. As with the classes, a child may have been enrolled in funding sources during the current 2023 to 24 program year. They won't come back with funding. Another reason why I don't want to call it rollover and confuse everybody. Nobody's going to roll over with funding. A new application will be created based on the information that's already in there. So all you should have to do for returning children is go into that funding application and just hit submit again, and it should make them eligible. But you do have to do that again because a funding program allocation is specific to a program year and site. So if you are in CSD Cares, actually, and you go to the top of the page, there's a list of there's a permanent menu at the top. Funding program allocations is one of the links, so you can click on that to get to a list of what you have. Again, Salesforce always wants to default to this recently viewed aspect, so just change that to all, so you can see all of the funding sources that you have. Again, we want to be working with the developers in the coming weeks to filter this view so you can see the current ones. I don't see active as an option, but I mean, I hope that can be added. It might be in there somewhere. But anyway, we change that to all, and so you'll see, you know, the allocation number, the site, but you also want to make sure that you're looking at the current one for the current year. And they'll all be listed together. So the numbers are going up. If you don't see, the year on your display, like they're being given out in numerical order. So the FPA with the highest number is going to be the newest one. Okay, so a lot of good questions right now. After moving from one program to another, should income be updated? This depends on what program they're going into. So the Head Start performance standards say that if a child is aging up from early Head Start and now they're going to be into Head Start this year, you need to make another determination of eligibility. But if you determined eligibility for the prevention initiative and now they're aging up into preschool for all, nothing in the agreement that I can see indicates that they need to have their eligibility determined again. So you can still use the same records, just keep them. So yes, technically that means a child who is enrolled in both preschool for all and Head Start will be using a different income on the different applications. That's why we keep them all and we have multiple HHI records in many cases. You can use the one that's accurate for the program that you're applying for based on the rules of that program. So what's the difference between a funding program allocation and a program option? So the funding program allocations are a funding stream that's like, here you see preschool for all, the prevention initiative. It's a specific program that's got eligibility restrictions and requirements. And so when DFSS allocates funding, we'll send you a letter and information about how many slots we're giving you. And these have their eligibility requirements, what site they're at, and so on. So when we look at the program options, the program option is just an age group and a site. So if you have a preschool age program, that's going to be called 3 to 5 year old center-based program option. It's going to have its own number, and that's connected to the Schoolman application. But it's what I call funding agnostic. It's not deciding that they're eligible for Head Start, they're eligible for preschool for all. It's just deciding that they're older than 3, but not eligible for kindergarten. It's giving them a seat, and you have to add the funding later. We also have what's called an FPE, which is a funding program enrollment. That's the record that's created when a child is enrolled in a specific funding source for a specific year. So that gets its own little object in Salesforce. The reason that record is useful, it's not, you might not interact with it much once it's created for center-based children, but for home visiting kids, once they're enrolled in the funding program, you want to go into that FPE record because that's where you can assign them to a caseload. And it has to be done that way because you can have a center-based class that has early Head Start kids and also kids that are just in the prevention initiative. You can put them all in the same class. You cannot do that with home visiting because the requirements are different and the group size is different. So they can't be blended. You can blend pregnant moms and children in the home visiting cluster. But the problem with blending them is that Head Start groups are supposed to have a weekly visit, and so they're limited to 12 kids. But prevention initiative groups, it's bi-weekly and you have 24. So you make the same number of visits each week, but to the frequency is different because they've got a different number of kids. So anyway, that's why you can't blend them. And so they have to have funding before they go into a group. I hope that was clear, but it probably wasn't. Okay. So when a child is enrolled in a program option, this means they've got a program enrollment. So they're enrolled in your birth to 3 program or your 3 to 5 program. It should create an application to every group. Again, that doesn't mean that they're eligible for every type of funding that you have. And in fact, you can't enroll them in all of them. So if you have a site that has early Head Start and also early Head Start childcare partnership, you can't enroll the child in both. So if you enroll the child in one of them, then you'll be blocked from enrolling in the other one because you can't double dip like that. You would have to drop them from the one program to enroll them in the other one. We don't really want you to do that, so just be careful about which application you submit. So ideally, rather than going through the child, you would go into the funding program allocation so that the only applications you see on the application list are those to that specific funding source. So you would go in and say, who's in early Head Start and check them all. And submit them, actually I have to do it one at a time, but then you would go into your other program and say, who's in this program and submit those. When a child receives multiple funding, do they need to have a FPA for each source? Yes. So if a child is in both early Head Start and in prevention initiative, both of those applications need to be submitted and the child needs to be enrolled in both programs. It's set up this way because it's possible to drop from one program and not from another. So once we get CCAP in here, a child might receive CCAP eligibility or lose CCAP eligibility, but that won't affect their early Head Start enrollment. The other big that can change on a larger scale is this year we had some sites who left the early Head Start childcare partnership program, so their children were no longer enrolled in that program, but they are still enrolled in PI. So they would drop from the one program. When you drop from a funding source, that just means you give it an end date. So the FPA or the FPE, even though I'm getting confused now. The funding program enrollment, when it's created, it has a start date and an end date. If you're doing it after the fact, you need to back up the start date to the real start date. If you do them like I'm urging you to do in August before it starts in September, the start date is going to default to September 3rd, and you can just leave it alone. If you put them in later, you have to backdate them. But the end date then will be August 31st. So if you want to drop them from the program before then, you just go into that, click the edit pencil and change the end date. And as of that end date, they're not enrolled anymore. And it doesn't, you can drop them, like I said, from early Head Start childcare partnership, but they're still enrolled in PI until you drop them. So you can, that actually happened this year. So that kind of thing is why they're all broken out into separate funding streams. The other reason we don't have combined, what did we even call them? Program models is what we call them in COPA. The reason we don't have those in CSD cares is that there's a, hold on a second. The other reason we don't have those in cares is that, as I said, the funding that you have for PI, for example, comes from CPS and it comes through DFSS and goes directly to the site. But many sites have Head Start or early Head Start that comes through as a partner, comes through a delegate agency. So all the funding doesn't have the same source. And in Salesforce, we can't combine them into one record because they're part of different funding streams. And that means they come out on different reports. So we can now pull a report that's got everyone in PI or pull a report that's got everyone in early Head Start. And some of those cases will overlap, but others won't. Okay. So the system is going to decide whether a child is eligible based on the information that's in there. So they need to have a household income record. Most of them should at this point, when a file comes over from Schoolment, a household income record is supposed to be created based on the income and family size that the family entered on the application. So, and that will be included on the application that's created. Now, if they don't have one, you need to create one, but also, if you look at it and it's wrong, you will need to create a new household income record before submitting the application. And when I say it's wrong, what I mean is if they came in and you met with them and you reviewed their income information and made a determination that we have their income and it's like $11,200 and they're eligible, but that's not what the HHI says, then you need to create a new HHI that matches the information that you got from the parent. So that when we look in the system, it says, this is why they're eligible. And if we look in their folder, we get the same thing. So if you've determined that the information that you got is wrong, you need to make a new one. That's not actually that complicated. What you do is you go to the household, so the equivalent of the parent record, and then in the menu up in the corner, you click on the triangle to pull down your options. Just click capture household income. It's going to walk you through a process. It's going to ask things, how many people in the household, do they have SNAP, do they receive WIC, and so on. So you fill that out and then it will create a new HHI for you. And you can then add that to the application before you submit it. Again, I've heard some issues where people didn't have the ability to edit that. The pencil wasn't there, so they couldn't change the application. They couldn't see the income. I'm not sure what this is. Again, I'm not actually the access guy, but we're going to do everything through that ServiceNow ticket system. So if you try to do this and you can't get at the system to make the changes, start a ticket and explain what's going on. We'll route that to somebody that can fix your access. If a child has been on the waiting list but is attending the program, once the correction has been made, do we need to go back and input their attendance? Yes, you do. I'm not. I mean, we've been trying to capture attendance now for a variety of ways. And definitely we're going to need to have something to say overall about attendance in July and in August. So if you're just getting a child enrolled now and they've been enrolled for a while, we do want you to go in and update their attendance records, which may not be possible until the next day. We had some issues with attendance. I believe they've been fixed. So if they haven't been fixed again, let us know. However, if you're getting someone enrolled now and they've been enrolled for months, at this point, I'm not really worried about attendance prior to July. So I don't need you to go back and put the whole year into CARES. And the reason for that is we've already submitted enrollment information. So the reports have been issued. So after that point, I mean, I'm not going to go in and change them because somebody added attendance after the reporting period. But for July is very much a going concern. So please, if kids have attending, you're just getting them in now, but they've been attending for weeks, please go in there and at least back to July 1st, put their attendance in. I realize we have this whole project going on to get your attendance in Excel. That's because so many people don't take attendance in CSD CARES. So as soon as we can get a report out of here, that's what we're going to do. But until we can get one that we're happy with, we need to continue to find other ways to get the data that we need because we're required to make monthly reports And we cannot just say, well, we have a system, but it's not working. We're not getting good information from it. We still have to report. Many other reports that we make to our funders, to the states, to the feds, to the governing bodies, these are legal requirements. It's part of our federal grant, state grant, is that we legally need to make reports on a legally determined schedule. So we have to get the data somehow, which is why we're so obnoxious about getting it from you. But once you take attendance in here, we'll be able to, run a report, send it off. It'll make life much easier, and we will be out of the spreadsheets. It'll make me happy. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'll be ecstatic. Okay. Well, anyway, submit an application. It's going to ask you if you're sure. There's always a pause that you really want to submit the application. I mean, you do. It's asking you this because if you got the information wrong, once you've submitted it, you can't edit. You can make a copy of the application, but you can't edit it anymore once it's been submitted, because we can't have one that was approved. You've got a requirement check that's passed, and we said, okay, this kid is eligible for this reason, and we put them in and we add them to enrollment, and then later someone goes in and changes their income. We can't have that. Another great question. I don't have an answer right now. How can you print an attendance report? What I would say is go through the reports and analytics tile on your login page to CSD Cares, go to folders and look at attendance reports. I'm not confident right now about what you can see based on different people having different access, but try that. And if there isn't one, or if the report that you can get doesn't meet your needs, then once again, start a ticket. I'll send that to the developers to hopefully try to get a new report built. Although we're losing them soon in the capacity we have. We will still have people doing maintenance and support for us, but in terms of developing new modules, that's pretty much done. So once the CCAP comes live and they've added a few other changes that we need, the development process will be done. Okay. I mean, you've seen all this. Again, if you did a requirement check and it's successful, you can just click on the link from in there. It'll take you back to the funding program allocation. Once you've done that for everybody, you just check the boxes of all of the kids who you want to enroll in that program, hit confirm changes, and it will put them in. So one reason to do this before time is that if you put them in now, it's going to default to the beginning of September date for enrollment. But if you're doing it after the fact, it will just create allocations with whatever date you use as a start date. So if you're doing it after the fact, you'll need to go in and change those start dates. But if you do them ahead of time, it's just gonna give them September 3rd, I think, as a start date automatically. You don't have to worry about editing it. Okay. So once that's done, children have to be assigned to their class or caseload. And again, you can do this now. Once they have a program enrollment, you do not need to wait until September to do that. So to put a child in a caseload, I covered this a bit earlier, but they need to have a funding program enrollment, and it needs to be the same one as the caseload. So if they're in early Head Start, home-based, they need to have that funding source assigned, and the caseload needs to have been created with the same funding source. So you can't put a PI home visiting child in an early Head Start home visiting caseload. They have to match. Once they match, you go into the funding program enrollment and pick the caseload. And the first time you do this, you see there's a new caseload link. For the first kid that you assign to that visitor, you can actually create it from here, and it will be on the list for all of the other ones. So a question, do all children need a caseload? All home-based children need a caseload. So PI, home visiting kids, early Head Start, expansion, home-based kids, etc., need to have a caseload. Pregnant moms need to have a caseload. Center-based kids don't. They can. And if you're dividing up like family services by caseworker, you might want to give them a caseload. But it's not required, but you can't write up a home visit unless they're assigned to a caseload. So once they're assigned there, what you'll see is that it's going to automatically create visits. So if you put them in a caseload for next year, it's in PI home visiting, for example, it's going to automatically generate blank visits twice a month for the entire program year. And then you can just go into those once they've been created as they happen and write it up, put the actual date, write up the actual whatever happens and save it. But they're already created. But they don't appear until they've gotten their funded enrollment. And if you give them the caseload at the same time, the caseworker can go in and see a different view, which has all of this week's visits, next week's visits created ahead of time. And you can use that to plan. So to add children to a class, you know this, so I'll go really quickly. You go into, once the class is created and the children have program enrollments, you go into the class, click on where it says add students to class, and it'll give you a list. Now, I have no explanation for this, but once you do that, you get the list of children. They'll be in a very strange random order. And a lot of times I talk to people and they're not able to find the kid, but once we look through, they're in there. It's just they're not in any particular order that I can understand. But if you click on the top of the list where it says full name, it will put the children in alphabetical order by first name. And so then you can scroll down and look them up. Otherwise, it's just really confusing. Oh, so somebody asked, I said this at the beginning, I think, but yeah, we're gonna send out the PowerPoint here. I started recording this, so I'm also going to send out a link to this video. If you really want to watch me again, we can do that, so you'll be able to watch this again. Also, remember the not roll over the re-enrollment part. The training is going to be available through the knowledge base. So we'll send this out in multiple formats to everyone. Okay, so here's an interesting question. Should tuition-based children be inputted into CARES? Only if they're in the same class. So we do have required maximum class sizes. So we don't want to have 23 kids in a preschool classroom because 3 of them are tuition-based and not publicly funded. So we need to either, well, there's 2 ways to do it. We can either include the children in that classroom so that the class is full and we can see how many children are there. The other thing we can do is if the tuition-based kids are taking seats that otherwise would be available to kids on the application. You can again edit the number of seats on the application to reduce them. So if you had 20 seats, but you have 3 kids that are in the classroom that are not publicly funded, I suppose you could go in and just change the number of seats you have to 17. You just don't want to forget that you did that, because even if the children then drop, the seat will not be available on SchoolMint unless you increase it to 18. So if you're going to have tuition-based kids, over income, not publicly funded kids applying, you can create seats for them in SchoolMint on line 5. It's the unrestricted line. That means, well, what it says, that there's no eligibility requirements. So if you want to have 5 seats for over income families, you could just put them on that line. Just make sure to take them away from the other lines. So again, you're not making offers to families when you're full. Let's see. Okay, dropping a child, I put this in here, it shouldn't be immediately the case, because try not to enroll someone if they're not really coming back. But if you do, or if program enrollments are created for children who don't end up returning, then you're going to want to drop them so that they don't take up space. So the important thing about this is, depending on how enrolled they are, you have to drop them from everywhere, but you have to drop them in order. Okay. What I mean by that is, if you assign them to a class, you need to drop them from the class. You would go into their class relation and change the end date. If they've never enrolled, then the end date should be the same as the start date. But otherwise, the end date should be, I want to say, the day after their last day of class. So you can still mark them present on their last day of class. You have to do that one first. Then you can remove their funding, you can remove their program enrollment. The reason it has to be in this order is that if you end their program enrollment while you have the class relation, you suddenly can't edit the class relation to drop them, because you'll get an error message that says you can't do that because this child isn't enrolled. So they have to leave the class first and then the program option, and not the other way around. Okay. So additionally, if the reason that they have program enrollment is that you mark them as rollover, they came back, and then the year starts and they don't actually come back. So you have an enrollment for someone who never enrolled. There's 2 steps. The first one is, again, to drop them by making the end date being the same as the start date. And then you save that record. Then you would edit it again, and the second time all you do is check the box that says invalid enrollment and save it again. And what the invalid enrollment does is, when we then get a list of all the kids that had enrollments this year, it will not include the children whose enrollments are invalid. So it's just the valid enrollments that are on that list. So that's helpful to make sure to mark them as invalid and get rid of them. Also, last year, the reason we're doing this when we've developed this new process, last year, some might remember that the re-enrollment process didn't work as well as might be hoped, so that children who had turned 3 and should have gotten 3 to 5-year-old enrollments were given new birth to 3 enrollments instead, and they were not eligible for those seats. So we at DFSS had to go in and make all those enrollments invalid by hand, and there were over 1,000 of them. So we're very hopeful that it will go much more smoothly this time. But make sure, if someone ends up with an enrollment that they shouldn't have, either they didn't return or It's the wrong age group again, and go ahead and make them invalid. Quicker you do that, the better. I did that one. Okay, so that's it. We did that. That's the entire re-enrollment process. So to recap, we're gonna set up next year, because we can do that right now. You can set up caseloads and set up classrooms. You can go do that today, and you can identify returning children. And we're going to begin, the target is August 15th. We're going to then create new program enrollments for all the identified returning kids. New children you can accept today. For anyone that does have a program enrollment, you can apply funding and then place them in next year's class. And that's all 24 to 25 activities that you can do before September. And if you get that done before September, then when you come back after Labor Day, the only thing you have to do is take attendance. They're already in the class, they already have the funding, it's already set up. So this gives you the opportunity to be much more smooth about starting the new year rather than having to start the new year with no enrollment and having to hurriedly get everybody placed in the classroom. But we're hoping this is helpful and makes the transition easier this year. Okay, so there's a couple things. Again, this is our system of record. We're not kidding this time. We never were, but for real, we need everyone to be in the system now. That means they have a program enrollment, they have a funding program enrollment, and they have a class relation or a caseload in the system. So we can say, we can look in there and say, this is our PFA enrollment, for example. This is how many kids we have, this is where they are. So that will save us a lot of time. If everyone can do that and also fill out their ISB history record in September, then we will not send you enrollment spreadsheets. And we'll be able to get that information out of CARES and not ask you to do another enrollment sheet. If we can't get them in here, then we'll have no choice but to go back to Excel. But I'm hopeful that we can get this done. We want attendance taken for center-based kids by 10 o'clock in the morning. I should go on to clarify, because I think I figured out something why I don't like the way the attendance looks. If they're present, mark present, but this isn't a 1 versus 0 system like we had in COPA. So if they're absent, don't do nothing, click the box that says absent. So pick one or the other, because the reports that we get actually have 3 columns. It's I don't remember what it's called, but basically no response, then present, then absent. So it doesn't register not clicking anything as absence. It just means you didn't take attendance. So go in there if they're absent and click absent. If the class is closed, that's a topic for another day, but you do that through what's called a schedule exception. As part of the class schedule, you just put the date in and say the class is closed, and then nobody's present or absent. Okay, documentation that we will need. We want to see immunizations, the health screenings, the developmental screenings, disabilities information, and the ISB history. Now I see, back to attendance, what about holidays? It's the same thing. A holiday is a schedule exception. So when you look at the class, it'll identify what schedule is assigned to the class. You click on that. And for a schedule exception, you just would put in a date and like put then in the description Labor Day. And then on that date, nobody will be present and nobody will be absent because the class will be closed. Okay, what's considered an excused absence? I don't want to come down on that as the authority, because I bet there's an actual definition somewhere that I don't have in front of me. But basically, we're talking about children who are sick, but also if the family took them out for another reason. I mean, the very narrow and probably oversimplified rule of thumb is that if they called and told you they were going to be absent ahead of time, it's excused. But if you're expecting the child to show up and it's just a no-show, then it's unexcused. But there's probably more complicated, specific definitions than that. What about children who are arriving after 10 a.m. every day, like they were receiving services for disabilities at CPS, and then we're transported to school? How do we mark for attendance? Well, you can actually edit after the fact. So what I would do is, if they're supposed to arrive later, is go ahead and mark everyone else present or absent, but don't mark that kid yet until they either arrive or don't arrive, and then you can go back and edit it. We're saying 10 a.m. For a couple of reasons. One, we'd like to be able to get reports later in the day, but the other is that, as a matter of policy, if you do have no-shows, and like no call, no show, it's like a safety precaution. So it should be standard procedure to try to call the parents. So if you're expecting little Johnny to show up and he's not there by 10, you should call and just say, "We were expecting you. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you sick? Do you need anything?" Just as a safety precaution, kind of to find out if they're in trouble, if they're home with an infectious disease that maybe the other kids should know about, the other family, something like that. Anyway, that's just kind of a procedure. So when we were looking about how to approach that, we wanted attendance taking in the morning of the day, so that everyone is aware if there's a unexcused absence, and that then we can do follow-up as appropriate. Okay, well, that I've already been answering questions here, but that's everything that I have. So as I said before, I'm going to make a PDF of my slides here. I'm gonna look through one more time and proofread, because I saw as I went through that there was at least one slide where I put the wrong year. But then I'm going to have this sent out with the next CSD update. I have recorded this, so once we get the file from that, we're going to make that available to you. We'll send that a link for that as well. Probably, do we still have a YouTube page? At one point we had a YouTube page, in which case we will post it there. Which would make me a YouTube creator. And so this is where I should say something about like and surprised. Like and I already screwed it up. Never mind. Ring the little bell. You know how it goes. Okay. So unless there's anything else, I'm going to give you 6. Oh, we do. Do families have to meet requirements every year, and do we submit the documentation every day? Good question. So actually, the eligibility period is determined by the program of their funding program. So for early Head Start, for example, when you've determined eligibility, it's good for however many years they're in the program until they're going to go to a Head Start or preschool program. So what that means in practice is you do need to submit an application in CSD Cares every year, because they're applying to a different funding program allocation, but you don't have to redetermine eligibility for it, meaning that for their second year, you will use the same household income record that you did last year. So the application will be identical, except that it will be applying to a different program year. So for PI, as again, my understanding based on an intergovernmental agreement with CPS and with the state requirements is that that is good for their the duration of their enrollment in PI. As for whether you need to redetermine at the same agency to go when you're transitioning into preschool for all, it's a good practice to do so. But
You could go ahead
when I looked at the
and
program
later.
requirements,
Show you something really quick.
I didn't see it. So I guess I'd follow up with that later by email and I'll find out for certain, but I don't know that there's a requirement for that. Like there is for Head Start, if they aged up, you need to do the a redetermination is a childcare thing, but you need to get their eligibility determination documents and have new ones. But within the same program, again, you're gonna have to submit an application every year in CSD Cares because each year is its own monster in CSD Cares. But you don't need new documentation, you need a new folder for it. So returning to the same funding program for the second year, you're gonna use the same household income record. I tell you just to clone the old application, except we're creating new ones. Hopefully when the program enrollment happens anyway, but also you want to make sure that you have both the program year, but also there'll be a new allocation number. So there'll be a couple of differences, but you don't need new eligibility information. That said, the result of that is that if we overrode their eligibility last year, so if they're enrolled as over income, and then I went in and edited it to make it an over income enrollment, I'll have to do that again because that status, you can't set other type of eligibility as a reason that's restricted. And right now, I think it's only restricted to me, although I'm going to try to get some other people added because there's going to be a lot of them. Oh, do over income students have a different program model? I'm not sure what that means. Like if you're approved over income in Head Start, then you would still be enrolled in the Head Start funding program. But if you're a private pay kid in a classroom with Head Start or PFA kids, then it is a different model. You won't be able to. For one thing, Preschool for All doesn't have an over income option. So we have our most recent agreement with CPS allows us to enroll children up to 400% federal poverty. It used to be 200%, so this is catching most of them. But if they're like 410%, we're not able to override that. The only overriding condition is that if they have an IEP for not for Head Start, but for Preschool for All and PI, having an IEP or IFSP will override the income eligibility requirements, and you can just enroll them. So that it's actually below 400% federal poverty as an income or an IEP. So that'll automatically let you do that, but we're not, if they don't have an IEP, we can't force it the way we can with federal funding. Yeah, so the next question, can agency start the new school year before September 2nd? No, you can't. It won't work that way. I would point out though that for returning kids, the old school year is still in effect. So you can still take attendance for them in their old classroom right up until the end of August. The only issue is that we won't be able to put rising 3-year-olds in the 3 to 5-year-old classroom until September. That's something we might want to look at a way to do for future years, but we don't have that ability right now. So this is tough. What should the next step be if authentication failed error is being received when attempting to log in? So I want to say start a ticket, but of course you can't get to the ticket system if you can't get through the single sign-on. So if that happens, I hate to say this, but send me an email and I'll start a ticket. So if a child has an IEP, they're automatically guaranteed a spot no matter income. Yes, for PFA and PI. Yes, they're automatically guaranteed a spot no matter income. It does not apply to Head Start or Early Head Start though. So if you have a dual funding program, you have to be aware of that. You still need to use an over income spot for them and you got up to 10%. They will not be named, but as we were doing enrollment in spreadsheets, we had a couple programs that enrolled more than 10% of their kids as over income. Please do not do that. That puts us out of compliance with the feds. As for who approves them, that's me, but don't send me an email. Start a ticket in ServiceNow. I gotta get used to saying that. Because I can see how many there are. It's much better organized than my email inbox is. So I know what's outstanding and it doesn't falls off the bottom of the list, so to speak. Okay, so I see I'm going to be getting a backup of the chat. So I will be in touch with people who haven't been able to get in, but send me an email anyway. Again, I'm not the access guy, but now that we are all in the same ticket system, I'll start a ticket and assign it to the appropriate parties. For real, you're gonna end up liking this whole ServiceNow thing because we can reassign tickets to people that we've hired to deal with issues. It can be to my unit. We can send them to IT. We can send them to software developers if there's a bug, like all over the place. Everyone's in there and connected. So you don't need to know who you need to contact to get a problem addressed. You just need to start a ticket and then it can be reassigned internally. So that hopefully will speed up our ability to address issues. Okay. So now we are over time. I'm going to stop the recording. And say goodbye to everyone. I'm not going to turn it off just yet, only because I want to make sure that we can get all the reports out that we need to get out before I do so. 'Cause I haven't done this in a while. So